So, Rob, welcome to Gaming and Advertising.
Thank you, Vincent.
So, Rob, firstly, I think just for people who aren't familiar with you, it might be a good idea to just give them a bit of an overview on your background and your career.
Well, I'm best known for being the former global digital director of GroupM at WPP. Sometimes I like to say I'm best known for being the only global digital director at WPP on the basis there was no chief digital officer before me, and I haven't hired one since. So I was extremely lucky with many colleagues over a long period of time up till the end of 2017 to really watch the formation of the digital advertising marketplace as we know it, to see the emergence of Google and Facebook and Amazon, or more broadly, the emergence of search, social, and commerce, and how that changed the industry. So I was very privileged to have a front row seat and some world-class colleagues, world-class clients, and a world-class infrastructure to enjoy that from. And as a consequence of having that career, I was actually able to stop before I was kicked out at the end of 2017 and build a second life of sorts, if you like, as a consultant and an advisor and as a director of a number of companies. And it's a great pleasure.
So, yeah, like I say, you've been taking on a few advisor roles, and I think today you're speaking with your Admix hat on. Could you maybe just explain a little bit about what they do and why you decided to start working with them?
Sure. So Admix is my newest advisory role. I got a call from Nigel Morris, who had the same sort of career as a villain at Karahanij and Dentsu that I had at WPP. So we go back a long way. He's one of the few people that I have more hair than, so I'm prepared to listen to him whenever. And he talked to me about Admix, and it's a cross-device in-game programmatic advertising platform that sells ads to advertisers and provides monetization routes for developers. And so the premise is that everybody knows that people spend an awful lot of time gaming, whether it's console gaming or casual gaming. And there is a general sense that where people spend time and offer their attention, there should be an opportunity for advertisers. And as my old mentor and boss, Chris Ingram, used to say, he said, it's pretty clear in this case that there's a gap in the market for in-game advertising. What remains to be proven, and I think Admix has a chance of proving, is that there is indeed a market in the gap.
So, and in terms of where they place the ads, they're placing the ads into the actual game?
Yes, absolutely. So they work directly with developers. They have a frictionless platform, so it's SDK free. So it's very easy for the games and the ads to become integrated with one another. And then during the gameplay experience, ad units are created by the developer using standard ad formats and sizes that are provided by Admix. And so the developer controls the user experience. And when you think about why that's important, that being interrupted by advertising when you're watching something or reading something is one thing. Being interrupted by advertising when you're actually doing something is maybe a bit different, and the bar needs to be higher, or the format needs to be more native. And it was pretty clear from linear TV ads in linear TV programming, linear audio ads in linear audio programming, radio, social ads in social feeds, search results in search feeds, and so forth, that success comes when the native format finds its way into the media consumption experience. And I think that's where Admix are going with this effort.
So one thing we're seeing across the gaming landscape is, you know, the sort of construction of these sort of open world environments, which some people are calling the metaverse. I don't think it's any one thing, but it's lots of different worlds. What role, if any, so my question, is marketing and advertising like to play in these environments?
Well, so I'm not sure I'd go into a boardroom and try and persuade the CFO that having a presence in a metaverse was a particularly good idea. And that's a good sort of measure for these things sometimes in terms of the language. If, on the other hand, you went to the room of the CFO and said, in aggregate, there is an enormous amount of time spent on this broad range of activities that change in flavors depending on the time people have available, the device they have available, and who they are and what they do and what they like, but that there is a way to inject our brand and our messaging into that environment in a way that isn't rejected, I think people will be very happy to do that. And I think the market is clearly bifurcating on a number of dimensions. And you've got the esports world and the super immersive world of the first-person shooters and so forth. And you think about the work that Activision Blizzard do and others, and that's a kind of huge deal. And that's not necessarily the market we are in. We're in the market of when people are taking snacks of time and enjoying themselves, we're adding advertising and product experience into that environment. So I think it's a legitimate place to play. I'm not making any claims that it's going to be bigger than television or bigger than the internet, but I think it seems highly probable that in-game advertising will be a significant location for budget over the next 5 to 10 years.
And gaming communities, they tend to be quite a sensitive bunch. Depending on the community, of course, but yeah, broadly speaking, I think it's fair to say that they're quite sensitive to companies and publishers meddling with the gaming experience, particularly when it comes to monetization. Do you think that brands and agencies need to sort of adopt certain types of tactics to get the best out of these environments and to be accepted?
Well, the one thing you can't do is just call it gaming and think that there's a sort of a one size fits all. Because if you're a person that plays League of Legends for a living and does that, you're a pro gamer, your view on advertising would be really different from if you're playing Candy Crush on a subway train. So it's not the same gig at all. And it would be completely wrong to sort of conflate those issues and say, because there's an attitude over here, then it affects everything over here. So we should sort of put that aside. And though, if you'd been a smart adopter of each new platform as it emerged over the last 20 years, what you would have done is you would have looked at the platform, you would have looked at the user experience on that platform, and then think about the ways that brands and advertising can fit into them. So the user experience on YouTube, for example, is different from the user experience on Snap. And so you wouldn't necessarily use the same creative asset that you made for YouTube on Snap. And you certainly wouldn't have taken the television asset that may be in the video of origin, if you like, and then tried to use it across those platforms. What you would have done is tried to create something that had the right hook, the right messaging, the right sort of rate of exchange or value exchange with the user that says a little bit of your attention is worth this much to me, or whatever it might have to be, and thought it through like that. And so I think that anyone that's trying to find an answer in their gaming unit to this problem is going to struggle. I think if they're trying to find an answer, say, what am I going to do in those media snacks that people are spending 5 minutes on the bus or waiting in the car doing, as opposed to what am I doing in those media occasions where people are spending 12 hours and having the sort of pizza delivered intravenously doing, you have to think about them in different ways.
And what to make? I'm always curious to speak to agency people after they've sort of left their main role. But what do you make of the way agencies are evolving? I mean, we've had the people sounding the death knell for years with in-housing, the consultancies, big tech, all supposed to sort of eliminate the role of the agencies. Are they now at a point where they're reaching, where they're on a sustainable footing?
Well, so clearly reports of their death were exaggerated many times over. And as Rashad Tabakawala, my good friend and former doyen of the publicist world, always used to say, agencies are like cockroaches. You can kind of keep stamping them out as much as you like, but somehow they'll find a way of popping up and reinventing and surviving. And of course, he was right. And allegedly, cockroaches are one of the few organisms that would survive a nuclear war. I don't know if that's true or not. But my sense is that actually the competition is at the edge. People have been focused on this idea that the competition to agencies is Google and Accenture, these sort of Leviathan enterprises. I don't think it is. I think the challenge for agencies is that their model in many cases, not in all cases, but the world I came from at least, was built on the idea of the AOR, the agency of record. So it was a good thing to win a big client in a market. It was a better thing to win all of the brands of that client in the market. And then it was an even better thing to win that client in all the markets in the world. And the best thing of all, if you could retain that client for many, many years. That was a good thing. And so what you were was a business that was designed to work with some of the people all of the time. That was your goal. Now, with the amount of sort of slicing and dicing and chipping and chopping that's going on in marketing services, some of which is tech-induced, some of which is organizationally induced, you'll find that there are many, many businesses that can actually work for all of the people some of the time and have no need to work for some of the people all the time in order to survive and be successful. So your organizational model in those areas and your economic model is very different. And you tend to be able to build businesses like that with a bit greater agility and a bit less sort of superstructure that allows you to move into different areas of opportunity more quickly, because you don't spend a lot of time sustaining services in areas that are no longer growing. And that's a bit of a challenge for the holding companies. But if someone had thought that the holding companies were finally going to explode, the first few months of the pandemic would have been the moment they would have chosen. And actually, there's been something of a renaissance, because I think clients have appreciated the extraordinary lengths to which the agencies and the people in those agencies went to maintain in that kind of business as unusual phase. And a lot of respect was earned. Now, of course, we're in a big dynamic of lots of pictures again and lots of change again, but I don't think that we're suddenly going to see some massive tectonic shift that says either WPP, Publicis, Omnicom, IPG, Carol Havas won't be the big winners in those situations. But what we will see is some top slicing, if you like, of specialist non-AOR type businesses winning assignments at the edge.
Yeah. Do you think the privacy changes and the fragmentation that comes with that, where you're going to be dealing with lots of different silos, often different methodologies when it comes to identifying your audience? It's not just your cookie list and push it out across a few DSPs. Do you feel like this complexity might actually work to the benefit of agencies?
Well, so I think we all know that data is important. Lots of people argue about how important data is. I think people generally believe that first-party data is more valuable than third-party data, and permissioned identity is the most valuable form of identity. So clearly there is going to be a headlong pursuit of permissioned identity, and that will go on at the publisher level, at the advertiser level, and that what the agencies will do, and lots of other people as well, is work with those parties to see how you can append permission data with other kinds of data that don't require permission in order to build new versions of segments or new ways of reaching markets. Clearly, there's lots of ways of doing this. So there's some people who believe that one identifier, the cookie, will be replaced with another identifier like UID. There's other people that believe that an identifier will be replaced by cohorts rather than individual identifiers, and look no further than Flock in that kind of area to establish that. And still more people that believe that the key, or still other people, not more people, but still other people that think the key to all of it is making sure that the way that identity is used and the data surrounds it is done in a completely anonymous and secure way. And that's the world of data bunkers and matching in the universe of InfoSum and edge-based data management. And so we're going to look at a world where we've got an identifiable web, or for example, and we're going to have a world where there's an anonymous web. And what people are going to be doing all the time is looking at the number of people we can identify and see how we're going to look alike those people as a model. And there's going to be a whole load of people that are looking at how we can take anonymity, but overlay that with context and other privacy compliant data, and people will be looking at the convergence of the performance of those things. So lots of work for everyone in all of this, and lots of work and everyone to think about how that works on the open web in the broadest sense, and how it works inside the universes of Amazon, Google, Facebook, Snap, Twitter, and many, many, many others. And then, of course, you get to the convergent moment of thinking, gosh, that's really interesting, because if you think of a world like Twitch, for example, to bring the conversation back to gaming, which we haven't touched on yet, and think about the enormity of their platform, and you think they've got lots of information, lots of identity about logged in users. They've also got loads of transaction data from the Amazon platform that you start appending, and loads of concomitant data from CTV, and new power emerges in all these places. And what agencies have always done, and specialist businesses have always done, is they've taken an intra-platform and intra-media view. How do I make the best use of video? How do I make the best use of video from each of these vendors and in each of these countries and for each of these categories? And then how do I look horizontally across all of them and build the attribution models that allow us to operate effectively? Because when it comes down to it, what businesses like WPP do is they're really in three different games. It's all united by messaging for brands and businesses. There's nothing they do that doesn't involve messaging for brands and businesses. And what they do is they do three things. They create those messages, which require many, many disciplines related to specific platforms. They distribute those messages, which requires just as many skills across many different platforms. And they look at the attribution of effect of what they've done in creation messaging. None of that changes. And they only do it for one reason. They do it to help brands and businesses grow. So as long as you come back to the fundamentals of why these businesses exist and the fundamentals of what you're trying to drive success for, then you're going to be successful, or you can be successful either in a traditional holding company structure or in a young emerging agency structure or in a specialist structure. You just got to keep your eye on the prize and be constantly competitive, constantly value driven, and constantly agile and curious.
I've never ever wanted to work in an agency, but you've kind of inspired me a bit there, and I'm sort of feeling like, yeah.
I worked in, I'm giving myself away a bit now, so I worked in agencies for 32 years. And I didn't get as rich as some of the people that didn't. I certainly wasn't as poor as some of the people that did and did other things. But the community of people and the depth and texture of the challenges available to people and the opportunity to meet people with different motivations and different needs, and to think about candy bars one day, video games another day, banks and airlines another day and another day, and to think about all the channels you use and put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and put yourself in the shoes of the client are really fascinating. I think one of the biggest changes, Vincent, is that when the ad agency business started, and I'm going way back to Commander J. Walter Thompson, going back into the 19th century, the agents were the agents of the media. It was the media that paid the agents. They became, before my lifetime, but during my lifetime and beyond, the agents of the advertiser rather than agents of the media. But more and more today, they're becoming the agents of the consumer as well. And it's our job in all of these businesses we work in, whichever bit of the system we're in, is to do more and better with less. So we need to use less shareholder and client money to achieve marketing effect. We need less consumer attention and data to achieve market effect, and we need to use less advertising inventory so we can create a better user experience for the viewers. And so if we think about being stewards on behalf of the advertiser, the media seller, and the consumer, it's a really kind of helpful way to think about how we organize our time and our priorities.
So if I was to transport you back to a hypothetical past, let's imagine that Maurice Levy has lost his mind. He shot Sir Martin Sorrell on a street in London. You're pushed into being CEO of WPP, let's say 10 years ago. What would you have changed about the strategy and why? Obviously, you're speaking with the benefit of hindsight now, but if you were to be able to go back then, or maybe you can speak about something that you thought at the time and wasn't able to push through.
Well, had I known I was going to be appointed CEO of WPP before the market did, I would have shorted WPP stock. I mean, that's I would have done. But I think seriously, and the thing I did do, because let's think about that. So that was in the summer of 2011, and we were still in recovery mode from the Great Recession. People at least felt the echoes of the pain. People were still in rehab, even though I think they knew by that time, because in the United States, we were 2 years and change into the Obama administration, and some of the clouds had lifted. We were into some interesting kind of progressive things like the beginning of Obamacare and the idea of universal health care in the US. So there was a sense of some optimism. What we were also in were the very foothills of Facebook's commercial existence, and we were absolutely in the midst of the world of organic reach from social media. At that same time, we were progressed into the broadband revolution, which I think really started in 2005, 2006. And we started heading to a place where we had maybe 75% of the internet population was looking at pretty fast connection speed. So video and so forth had become a thing. So knowing that and what we knew, and it was a fairly obvious progression from where we're going there, I think if I'd been bold and I'd had the permission to do it, which is very easy to say, but hard when you're running a publicly traded company, I think what I would have done is thought about reorganizing those three disciplines: message creation, message distribution, and message measurement or attribution, around the concepts of discovery, community, and commerce. I think that's what I would have done. I'd like to think I would have done that. And in doing that, that would have said, now I can understand how the Google platform works more broadly and what do I need to create for that platform. I would have been able to understand what the Facebook and later Instagram and Snap platforms would have meant in the area around community, and would have understood what it meant to do business with Amazon and JD and Alibaba and so forth because of commerce. So the idea of re-architecting asset creation, distribution, and measurement around discovery, commerce, and community, I think would have made for a very good speech at the time, and potentially for a very good business.
Yeah, I think so. What do you make of Sir Martin's new adventures? He's effectively living the dream and is re-architecting a model or the agency model with his own new vision.
So the two things one must never do with Martin is underrate him or trivialize him. And the reason that you do that is twofold. One, you would be wrong. And second, if you just wanted to agitate him and make sure that he ate your packed lunch and nicked your lunch money, that would be the way to do it. So I think what he's doing in some ways, I don't know if you'd be offended by this or not, is a bit of a do-over of WPP from a strategic point of view, in that what he's doing is that he stayed in marketing services of one description or another, very much in services rather than principal businesses. And he is creating an aggregation of assets that specialize in areas of what he believes to be increasing and sustainable demand. So the playbook is quite clear. Now, what Martin has done, he's realized very effectively that money is relatively inexpensive at the moment. It's a low interest period, and Martin has many memories of what life was like when money was expensive. I think he got very close to the edge once or twice in his career when interest rates were high. But he's realized that the cost of money is low, so he's able to collect his assets at an attractive price and is very competitive bidder for those assets, and has done something, I think, quite effectively, where he's got all of the companies he's looked at, not just to agree to sell out to S4C, but to buy in to S4C. So they're all stockholders in S4C. So I'm not a shareholder in Martin's business. That was a mistake. He didn't ask me to join the business when he started or subsequently. That probably wasn't a mistake on his part. And I wish him well. He's as we often said, or some of us often said at WPP, whilst working for Martin might be awkward, it was a damn sight easier than being a competitor.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great quote. So I remember asking you back at New Video Frontiers, I think about 5 years ago or so now, where would you invest in advertising then? I think you said attribution. Where do you think the biggest opportunity is in advertising today?
Oh gosh. So native programmatic scaled experiences are clearly the thing. Okay, so just broadly, if those characteristics are kind of super important, why would you not want that? If they're native to the consumer, they're programmatic for the buyer, and they're scaled for the advertiser, and hopefully frictionless to the developer or the programmer or the owner of the IP, you've got something there. And if you can find things with those categories and you think that the underlying user behavior is going to be strong, then those are good places to invest. One of the problems with making any comments about this is that the investment world has been, as everybody knows, a little bit frothy lately, and a lot of idle speculation, as I call it, about the different ways of getting companies to public markets. And so not all of the cases are rational. What I would say to anyone who has a business that is looking for funding, that the buy side of the business, the private equity companies and others, and the trade buyers have never been better informed than they are now. The speed at which these companies are studied and gaining expertise in these sort of subcategories of businesses is extremely high. As for actually investing, I'm sort of told by many people that if someone gave you 3 words when you were 18 years old and the subject was, how should I invest in the future? The answer would be buy index funds. And so if you're 18 and bought the S&P 500 and just stayed there, you would have done very, very well. So my sense is, if I was spending my own money, I would look at those firms who have got a record either in the venture world or the PE world or at the S&P 500, and I would spend their money there. I'm a lousy stock picker. I've always been, well, not always, but mostly unsuccessful at doing that. And so I wouldn't want anyone to leave this call thinking Rob said X other than buy index funds.
Yeah, I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm better off with, buying index funds. It's just spreading the risk, not trying to be too clever. And I think they're wise words to finish on. Rob, thanks so much for taking the time. Really much appreciated. And I'm sure the audience loved that.
And I hope everyone has a terrific time. And thanks to you guys for putting on these events. And it's a thrill for all of us that soon we'll be saying, remember when we did this during the pandemic?